Sabbath to you all. Special greetings to those who are joining us on Zoom. I believe we have Anne in Tobago, Henderson and Denise in Grenada, and Danley in St. Vincent. So welcome. Brethren, each week as we approach the Sabbath, in order to observe it properly, we must prepare for it. As a result, the 6th day, which is Friday, is usually called the preparation day. And this is when most of the preparations are done so that a restful Sabbath can be observed. Similarly, brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles, which is about 3 weeks away, needs to be prepared for in order for it to be observed properly. It is usually the highlight of the year for brethren in the Church of God. And it can be the best time of the year for us once we prepare for it in the right way. Therefore, brethren, in order to make the Feast of Tabernacles a wonderful experience for all of us, there are certain things we need to do now as we prepare to observe the feast. So, brethren, in the sermonette this morning, I want to focus on 3 things we need to do as we prepare to observe the Feast of Tabernacles. And the first one I would like to focus on is that we need to prepare our minds to have a spiritual feast. Brethren, the feast has 2 aspects to it: the spiritual and the physical. But we must remember that the main emphasis of the Feast of Tabernacles is the spiritual. And if we are not careful, the physical aspect can become the main focus at the feast. And we must strive to ensure that we don't let this happen to us. We must not let our minds become preoccupied with the physical aspects. Brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles is the time for us to be rejuvenated spiritually, to recharge our spiritual batteries, and to be reminded of God's plan of salvation for mankind. And let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 14. Deuteronomy chapter 14, and let's begin at verse 22. Verse 22 says, "You shall truly tithe all the increase of your grain that the field produces year by year. And you shall eat before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to make his name abide. The tithe of your grain and your new wine and your oil, of the firstborn of your herds and your flocks, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always." Brethren, I want us to notice the words at the end of verse 23, which says that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. Brethren, one of the main purposes for keeping the feast is for us to learn to fear God. And notice, not just sometimes, but always. Brethren, as human beings, we tend to fear God sometimes and not fear him at other times. That is our human nature. But we need to learn to grow in the fear of God so that we fear him always, with no exceptions. And brethren, keeping the Feast of Tabernacles is one of the ways we learn to grow in our fear of God. So brethren, during the feast, we must remember to focus on the spiritual purpose of the feast and not get sidetracked by all the physical activities that are occurring during the feast. And once we focus on the spiritual aspect, this will help us to have a wonderful feast. Now the second thing we need to do is to prepare to rejoice. Now let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. Deuteronomy chapter 16, and let's begin at verse 13. You shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days. When you have gathered from your threshing floor and your winepress, and you shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant and your female servant, and the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, who are within your gates. 7 days you shall keep a sacred feast to the Lord your God in the place which the Lord chooses, because the Lord your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the work of your hands, so that you surely rejoice. Brethren, notice in these verses, God commands us to rejoice. And he doesn't only mention it once, he mentions it twice in these verses. And with the second one, he says, you shall surely rejoice, to emphasize it further. So brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles is a time to rejoice. God does not want us to have a sad, sour, or unhappy face at the feast. He wants us to have positive, radiant faces while we are at the feast. Because the Feast of Tabernacles is not a time to be depressed or discouraged. Yes, we may all have problems that we are facing, but we need to leave those behind when we go up to observe the feast. Try to forget all the things that are bothering us. Now, while we are at the feast, problems and trials will arise. Everything will not run smoothly. For example, we may have problems with the room we may be staying in. It may not be up to the standard that we expected, or we may not like the food that is being served, or we may not like what someone said or did. So many things can go wrong. But we must not allow these things to make us become upset or negative. Don't become like the children of Israel in the wilderness, when they started to complain and murmur about the situation they were in. We must remember that God is testing us in these situations to see how we respond. Brethren, the feast pictures a time of joy and happiness in the millennium, and we need to exhibit that joy during the feast. Now, the third area I want us to focus on is to prepare to serve. Are we going to the feast to be served by others or to serve? What is our mindset? Are we just going to have a good time? To have a vacation? Is our emphasis on ourselves and how much can enjoy ourselves at the feast? If that is our mindset, we need to change it. Jesus said it is more blessed to give than to receive. His mindset was on serving others, and that should be our mindset as well. Brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles provides us with a wonderful opportunity to serve. And the Feast of Tabernacles pictures the time when we will be kings and priests in the millennium. And God wants His kings and priests to be servants. And the Feast of Tabernacles is preparing us to be servants, to learn to serve from now. And there are many areas we can serve in. And just as an example, Henderson and Denise Andrews will need help in planning the various activities that will occur at the feast. And we can volunteer to help with these activities. If we see a need, don't wait for someone else to do it. We should try and do it ourselves. We need to be on the lookout for areas and opportunities to serve. Brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles is a time for giving, sharing, and helping. And it provides us a wonderful opportunity to grow in these areas. So in conclusion, brethren, the Feast of Tabernacles is the most wonderful time of the year for the Church of God. We will be attending church services for 8 days, and we will be receiving spiritual food for those 8 days. Don't allow the physical food and the other physical blessings at the feast to overshadow the main reason why we are at the feast. Let us observe the Feast of Tabernacles with the right attitude and focus so that we can obtain the maximum benefit that God intends at the feast. So I would just like to wish everyone a spiritually rewarding and invigorating Feast of Tabernacles 2018.